The problem with saying things that one can understand, or that people can understand. I'll give the example of Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Straightforwardly, it means that if we have a rule, a computer algorithm can be set up to show whether the rule was followed or not. But the incompleteness lies in the fact that we've decided that it makes sense to call something a rule. So, for example, A plus B, we might say, is equivalent to B plus A. We could also make a rule that says A plus B is not equivalent to B plus A. What would be wanted is that the rule conform to reality. So, and that's it. That's the whole statement of what Gödel's incompleteness theorem means. It's incomplete because we have to be the ones that decide that it makes sense through our direct, quote-unquote, intuition or and showing. So it's so simple that it's people would say, "Oh yeah, well that's a truism. That's obvious." We have, people feel contempt in a way for things that are too simple. But then if you look at, so for instance, you have a subject supposed to know a great mathematician, and I'm not saying he's not that. He is. Penrose, and there's a little 3-minute. I just looked at it. There's a little 3-minute clip out of a Joe Rogan interview where he goes on about it in a nice, elegant way, and almost nobody in the comments could understand what he's saying, but they like it that way because he looks right, he has the right badges, and he is what and in fact he is a very thoughtful man, and he gives a number of references to unsolved problems that are interesting, and things in the field that are worth one could look up, and so on and so forth. So these things are often simple in such a way that we feel contempt to them. One more comment on this issue. Originally, and until very recently, there was no need for the something like Gödel's incompleteness theorem, or for set theory in general, for Russell's version of set theory, for instance, where there's always a problem about the largest hoop, or the set of all sets, which reminds of the medieval problem of the genus supremum, or of if you start with some particular thing like trees, and then you say trees are in an environment, and then you say the environment's in the universe, and then what's the universe in, and you finally get to the largest hoop. There's no way to bound it. It seems to how do you talk about the universe? It seems like when we say the universe, we're speaking of one being that's amongst other beings inside a larger set of things, the set of all sets, and then the question arises, is the set of all sets, which contains all sets itself, something we can talk about inside a larger set? So these kind of problems are extremely simple, to the point where it's always this question of, the only thing that makes us wonder about them is why they don't make us wonder more. So we all have to devise ways to try to make ourselves to wonder more about the simple things comes in. The reason these problems came into mathematics, the incompleteness theorem and the set theory, is because they gave up the idea that math should be based, as the Greeks had, that math should be based on something that in German they say anschauen, which is translated as intuition, but it means something more like apprehending. So that um, the ancient math always was something that was supposed to conform to geometry in a way that it made sense visually. That's why there was a prohibition about the numbers that couldn't be represented as fractions, the so-called irrational numbers, because they had no visual representation, no Anschauung, which made any sense. That since that's been given up, since math has been put on um, this total um, a priori rule basis, like what I just described, the a plus b as equivalent to b plus a, and other similar statements which have a direct intuitive sense to them. So they're not just things that are rules, but they're things that are um, rules that somehow make direct sense. So that's the point of it. And then this issue of the direct sense comes in. So the issue of the connection between the human being and the foundation of math still comes in, but not through, as with the Greeks, through the visual manner. Um, Richard Alexander Wong Q, the Afro-Jamaican mathematician, used to tell me a mathematician a true mathematician ultimately thinks without geometry math is not worth doing. But that's no longer really the foundation we're talking about when we're talking about math, which is founded out of set theory, or out of this problem Gödel is raising. So that goes for philosophy too, I would say. So there's all kinds of problems where Heidegger keeps saying to everyone else who annoys him, because he has a natural appetite to go into the exact details of things, to try to, he's already feels, as it were, perpetually disturbed by these problems, which for everyone else are truisms and don't seem to need to be dug into.